I've been interested in the fnati treasure island fan game community since roughly mid-2016, and well, it has been extremely weird feeling throughout all of it. Obviously, I did have my downtimes, but this fan game for some reason has fascinated and felt more special to me than most others. It was especially mysterious to me because I didn't really have a computer and my only source of entertainment was on my parents' computers, which came from random flash games. So most of my involvement in the community back then just came from me watching random YouTube Let's Plays, Wordle jump scares, Spar remixes, fan animations, you know, all the ones. When I eventually got my own laptop in November 2018, I was in a rush to try out these games for myself. Now, I was very late to the party and didn't know about most of them post 2017, so I kinda just browsed the Treasure Island game page made by Marat and installed what was there. And yes, I was one of the stupid kids that thought abandoned Discovery Island and Marat's games were the real deal. To be fair, from the position of a kid on YouTube in 2016, when that was the main thing being shown, could you blame me? I feel like no matter how much I cared for or was interested in this fan series, I was never actually quite in touch with what was happening. At least not nearly as much as I thought I was. I had no idea what a blackout was. I didn't know about the whole Purity Sim Slime Beast thing. I didn't realize there was a common dislike for the abandoned Discovery Island endings. I just played each of the games and enjoyed them for what they were. And I was involved in the Scratch community, but we don't talk about that anymore. And when I learned about the Treasure Island 2020 remake, I played it when it came out and got too terrified that I never beat the game. Until a few months later, where I did finish it despite the 96 box, just not being a great thing to exist. And then there was my down period from 2021 leading to late 2022 with my resurgence of interest in early 2023. Ever since then, things have been the same. Every few weeks I find some interesting bit of Treasure Island info, whether that's about a game, character, or whatever, and then I make a video about it. However, there's something I noticed ever since my resurgence in status in this place. Why does everything loop back to the early days? Let's start the video by talking about the general idea of reviving a game. This consists of taking the old game and updating it to modern standards. This can mean making the graphics look way better, polishing up the story, and reworking some mechanics. Now, let's make something clear here, is this a bad thing? No, actually I see it as a great thing within reason. Remember I said that because it will come in handy later. There are a few good reasons to revive an old idea made by someone else. Firstly, most of the ideas in these old fan games may not be the worst, but they definitely weren't executed well. There was definitely a bit of a debate here, especially if those nostalgic glasses on. But most of these games have massive issues. Nobody's really going back to play Let the Show Begin because of the game itself. Those who were playing it probably just have a bunch of nostalgia for it through old YouTube Let's Plays. This game had a cool setting and it could be used to make a better story, like the idea of this game being a prequel to the actual fnati. There was potential to that, but it really wasn't executed well. You just tend to hold things from the past with more respect no matter how rough that idea was. And you gotta admit that, like, come on, this idea deserves to be improved upon somehow. Secondly, it can be interesting to see how each developer can put their own unique spin on each revival, with the mechanics they introduce, the ways they reinterpret a location, the characters, and the atmosphere they generally give. It can be nice to see. Not one Treasure Island remaster is the same as another. Thirdly, I think making a fan game revival like this is a great way to get experience. Especially if you're a beginner game developer, it can be a great way to get in touch with the community and make yourself known. I found most of my initial followers back when I started the GamesJoel account and posted old Wonder recreations of Mario models. My videos obviously, and through my old The End of Disney remaster. Those may not have been the best projects in the world, but I wouldn't be who I am today without those. However, the caveat is that decent chunk of Treasure Island revivals tend to struggle sticking out and be unique from one another. I want to talk about why this happens, why it's an issue, why there is such a thin variety of fan games being remade, and how to avoid mistakes and learn from them using examples from established creators. I know that the thumbnail and title look pretty bad, but I want to help you guys, especially if you're planning to go into game development as a whole. The last thing I want this video to come off as is that Treasure Island revivals as a whole should not be made, because I think they should, just like I said earlier, within reason. First of all, it feels safer than making your own original thing. Not easy. I think that's a really out of touch way to say it because it totally underestimates the amount of work required to make a fan game, but it is definitely harder to come up with all your own original ideas just in general, especially if you're a learning game developer. Mainly because the original fnati assets have been widely open and released for over a decade. It's so much easier to take existing models that function fine and edit them to do whatever this is. God damn it. And since there's already a million versions of MD or fnati out there, there's plenty of ideas to build off. And it's not crazy out there reason as well. Most programmers started by making a different version of Pong. Most artists started redrawing things using references and other things they used before. So why can't the same thing be said for fan games? My other reason might be a bit of a stretch, but I want to believe that what I mentioned in the intro about mystery leads into this a bit. Something I noticed about these old fan games when I go back to play them for roughly the last 5 years is that most of them were more empty than I remembered and weren't really complete experiences. For instance, I think most people playing the end of Disney back then wondered what was in the third floor of the Power Caverns. We never saw much of it apart from this one hallway, and taken from a personal experience, I, back in the day, wrote my own interpretation of what I would like to see in it. Actually, the caverns just in general are a great metaphor. It was something really not seen in any other FNAF fan game at the time. A full free roam section where different pathways or decisions you made could change the ending. Like I mentioned earlier, this was the thing that got me hooked on Treasure Island, and I felt like no matter what interpretation I saw of it, I never found one that satisfied me. So like I said, I wrote my own interpretation and shared it with people I knew. It wasn't a lot, but I wrote one. Granted, I don't fully remember what I had written down, but if I knew anything about fan game development back then and was able to turn my dreams to reality, I would have loved it. Assuming the idea was good, which it probably wasn't, but oh well. Stupid kids. I know this is a very out there idea, but I'm sure there's at least a few people who feel this way. I just think that for most of these revivals, they are made by people interested in game design, and while feeling passionate, may also be a little unfulfilled with what they saw, and want to execute their own take, potentially even with a dev team. So I think those are good reasons, plus the others I mentioned earlier, why a lot of fan game remakes exist. A developer makes a brand new take on an old, potentially flawed fan game that they enjoyed. People play it and appreciate a developer for making it, and then follow them to future projects. It's a win-win-win situation. But why is such a thin variety of revivals being made? If you couldn't tell from most of the video, I've just been showing MBD and fnati revivals. Well, I think it's because people tend to simply hold more interest in things they like. Original fnati, Nightmare Before Disney, and The End of Disney are the ones that have the most remakes. I'd argue the reason for that is because while these concepts were not executed the best by fans in the early days, they were fine enough for their time and you still see people respect them to this day. People still enjoy things like the End of Disney version 2 or MBD 2016 even if they are scuffed in a lot of ways, because the execution of their concepts was interesting enough. You don't see any Let the Show Begin or Breaking the Magic fans talking about how great their fan games were and that they deserve reboots, because those people don't really exist. Not a lot of people really found them interesting. It's something we are currently seeing with media right now. How often do you see remakes of media people loved as opposed to media people hate? So how is any of this a problem? Well, on one hand, I think the main pitfall just comes from the little variety of revivals. I'm not speaking about the quality of these games in the slightest. There are a lot of revivals which I've had to play for this video that are heavily based on both these things, which are really good, and I will mention them in a bit. I just want to see more variety. At a certain point, it doesn't matter how good a variation of 1.0 or MBD is, they can really start to blend together. We can do so much more than this, like Breaking the Magic, Let the Show Begin, The Civilian Story, Original Revamp, The Revenge, Strapped, Back to Life, The Magic Kingdom, Room Zero. These ideas are all freely on the table, but nobody remakes them for the reasons I mentioned earlier, despite the fact I'd say they deserve it way more than the current stuff that's being remade. MBD and fnati have been nearly perfected dozens of times by now. It's time to give the other games the attention they deserve. It's not a development issue or an idea issue, it's a variety issue. Imagine if you just watched one great show with a specific genre, and then all you proceed to consume is fan-made retakes of that one show and very rarely watch something else. Yes, you'll enjoy most of the stuff you see, but there is a certain point where you'll want to consume a larger variety of content in that genre. Maybe that's a really specific example that isn't the most applicable, but I think you guys get the general point I'm trying to make. I'm sure the developers behind these games are great, a lot of these games are great, I just want to see more revivals of different fan games rather than just the same stuff we always get. Is it an issue? Yes, but it's a general issue and no one's really to blame for it. I would hate for some developer working on a 2.0 revival to watch this video and think they are part of the problem and proceed to shut down everything and trash all their ideas, because they aren't part of the problem. They just wanted to make a fan game for fun, and there's no issue with that. The other issue has to do with what I like to call dead revivals. These are hardly even revivals. What I mean is a game page that is clearly abandoned, most likely uses the old anart models and the game page has next to nothing to offer. If there are any sorts of demos or teasers, they most likely have nothing special or noteworthy about them. This does tie into my previous video about Treasure Island Homeless because these are just random stock game pages that are taking up space where actually great fan games should be getting the spotlight. Yet again, this isn't the direct fault of anyone. The only way this can be fixed is that games will decide to rework their search system and add some filters. But let's be real here, they wouldn't do that. I will say, if you so far have disagreed with everything I've said in this video and still plan to make a Treasure Island revival, well, I'm not sure why you're still watching. But remember that this is just my opinion, that I want to see unique revivals rather than the usual 1.0 MBD shtick. The last thing I want people to get out of this video is that the very idea of Treasure Island revivals are bad, because that's not the point I'm trying to make here. My point here is that I want to see the best of these revivals, I want to enjoy and play these games, and see them do well is a sign that people want more. And that's why I need to emphasize that I did not say all Treasure Island revivals are like this. I said some. Giant difference. Saying there are no good Treasure Island games is like having the same mindset I see a lot on the internet, which is a really negative and terrible mindset, and I really don't want that to be the message here. I do want this small video essay to be used for good rather than harm. I want to talk about a lot of Treasure Island revivals that I do enjoy, or ones that I'm very excited for, and I also want to give my occasional tips and tricks. Firstly though, now we can get to learning. The Lost Ones Treasure Island and the Lost Ones The End of Disney are basically the Resident Evil remakes to Treasure Island. Each of them takes each bit of the original concept and rewrites them completely. These are basically entirely new games and are looking to be extremely promising. The End of Disney original Recalled is also another The End of Disney revival of sorts. Granted, it's trying to be more like how the original game would have been if it was released in 2016 rather than being a full-blown remake. Honestly, I think it's kind of interesting in that way alone. Torment Below Disney is one still in development. Looking at game previews we have so far, it looks insane. Like, beyond Radiant team quality, I'd argue. I should also say there's also one of my friends who helps with this game, which is the reason this is mentioned here. And they brought up a good point that this is basically its own thing. Like, can you tell there's media inspiration? Yes, but that's just inspiration. These are basically entirely new games. It's like how Earthbound is at Deltarune. Especially with how messy MBD remakes are to the point where Radiant team has made their own statement about the slap regarding it. These developers have been able to reinvent the original concept and do something completely fresh. Abandoned Discovery Island looks to be a very interesting revival of Abandoned Discovery Island that might cure my childhood curiosity ever since I saw Risker and played the original version in 2016. Another Treasure Island fan game is a great fan game that takes a bunch of gameplay type aesthetics and has a great pick of unique mechanics. There are also these minigame areas of sort. It is a pretty hard game, but it is great. Honestly, a must play. Treasure Island Rebranded takes the entire spin on the entire malware ransomware style of horror that has been popular recently, and it's a pretty good take on the whole thing. And lastly, Abandoned by God has a full hand-drawn art style, and the way mechanics are handled still feel very fnati while being very refreshing. I'm aware I haven't even scratched the surface of all the Treasure Island games, but I don't think I need to. I'm very open to hearing suggestions in the comments. I just want to make it clear that there are some standout games in this community. As for my little tips and tricks, here's some I got. I think the best way to revive a game isn't to take each part of the game and just redo it yourself. I suggest taking a bunch of ideas that are in the game and writing them down and figuring out how you would interpret them. For instance, how would you personally interpret shutting off the cameras? Maybe you can make it so you can reboot it by typing in a passcode? Maybe you have to access a camera summoning of some sort? Try to figure out what your own interpretation is. Make aspects of your game inspired from others to see how you fit. Is that how you say it? This might just be a me thing, but if you're gonna make your character suits, I think they should look more like actual Disney World suits. It might just be me, but I don't really see this as an actual Disneyland suit. It looks closer to, well, a tune. More isn't always better. Try not to have too many characters or mechanics in your game, because it just becomes frustrating to play even if you learn them. Balance things as much as you can. This is arguably the most important point here. Your game can look as nice as it wants and have the best story, but if it doesn't feel good to play, it's much harder to enjoy. Remember how the player feels when they're playing a game. On a side topic, if you actually have an interesting idea for a Treasure Island related story sorts but don't feel like turning it into a game, I would totally love to see it posted somewhere else. Maybe like an audio reading on YouTube with some visuals in the background, but you can have more Treasure Island videos that aren't just Let's Plays, or me. Remember that if you have played a Treasure Island game and if you have issues with it, usually the developer is open to feedback. Obviously you aren't always going to get your way, but it's better than just doing nothing. If you need to put a fan game on pause or cancel it but want the page to be archived, just unlist it. There's already so much on GameJolt as it is from dead game pages, and we don't need more contributions to it. Lastly, there's nothing wrong with opening yourself up to challenges in game development and starting off rough. They can be used to help you become a better developer, and I'd argue are part of the experience. Marad started with Scratch and Gary's mod, and now he's doing amazing stuff like this. My conclusion for this video is that despite the fact I'm not really much of a Treasure Island fan like I used to be in 2016, I still want to help this community when I feel it's necessary. I've had people come on videos telling that they love them, and some mentioned that they want to make a game that I will talk about in my own video someday. While it's still a FNAF fan game community at the end of the day, and there are issues, there are some really great experiences I've had. It's become my duty to entertain you guys and help you when I can. I want to see great projects made in this community for years to come. I'm hoping this video will end up being helpful and even encourage some people to start their own revivals or fan games. Just remember at the end of the day that fan games are supposed to be a hobby that stays a hobby. Don't let some numbers on the screen overtake your passion. I'll see you guys in the next video, which is potentially a long essay on Discovery Island. Bye, guys.